Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly series of It Takes a Village. I'm so blessed to be joined this week by Ariel. We go a little bit back from a year ago. We met at Sisters Gathering to Heal, an event by Deborah Emmerichs, and we actually been chit-chatting on Instagram for a minute now and trying to get together. We've done a lot of chit-chatting, and to the point where you've actually introduced me to people who've been on the show.
Yeah.
So, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to hear your story because yours is a little more unique and quite different from our, typical diagnosis of how treatment was applied. So, jump in, tell us what's going on, when you were diagnosed, what you were diagnosed with, and just how life has been with, whatever type of autoimmune diseases that they diagnosed you with.
Okay, so yes, like you said, my situation is a little bit unique. Everybody's situation is unique.
Right.
Because lupus affects people differently.
Exactly.
Back in 2008, I was almost diagnosed with lupus.
You got to say what that almost is,
Yes.
because everybody's like probably watching like, almost what?
Almost, but what happened was, and I just want to give a backdrop of how it all came to be, because I watch your videos and I see a lot of people talk about how they just found themselves in it, but I remember exactly what triggered the sickness within me.
Okay.
And what happened was in March of 2008, I started a new job, and it was a job that I thought that I wanted, but once I got there, I realized that I had made a huge mistake by leaving the job that I was at previously for 5 years and going to this particular facility, and it was working inside of a jail. And once I got there, I just realized that, wow, I made a mistake. I made a huge mistake, and I started just being angry at myself, kicking myself in the butt, just not wanting to be there, but feeling like I had to be there at that point.
Right.
And I had a trainer that was very negative, narcissistic. He was an older gentleman who was disgruntled from the work that we were doing. And when I tell you, this man got under my skin in a way that no one has ever gotten under my skin. I mean, I could feel my nerves moving around in my body when I was around this man. Don't know if it was a spiritual thing or what, but
that sounds like it.
Yeah, he just was like a mortal enemy, and I had to sit as close to him as I'm sitting to you and be trained by him. I was also working with a negative population. Of course, I'm working in a jail, and it just was just a major mistake. And at that point, I began to just experience high levels of stress that I never experienced before. So I started that job in March of 2008, and around April, I started realizing that I was very fatigued, I was tired, lethargic, could barely get up and come to work. I was calling out of work a lot, and I just thought it was just because I didn't want to be there. So then I started losing my appetite, so I wasn't eating, and I'm pretty petite. I'm usually around 115 pounds. By the end of all that, I weighed 95 pounds. So I stopped eating, and I think because I was sleeping so much, and I wasn't eating. I was dehydrated. I couldn't even fit my clothes. Things were just falling apart, and I was young at the time, so I had, some boyfriends, and I'm like, well, I'm wondering, did I catch something? And just to be transparent,
right?
I didn't know why I was sick. I didn't really correlate it with work. The job,
right?
With what was going on.
And in that time frame, you really don't think, oh, it's my job. You think, dude, what's up?
Right.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah.
So I went to on April the 25th, I believe, I went to a clinic, just to be sure. So I went to the clinic and I got an HIV test, and it came up negative.
Okay.
And at the time, the guy that I was with, I didn't say anything to him, but he could tell that I wasn't doing well because I was moody, because I knew that I was losing weight. I didn't look good. I didn't feel well, so I kind of isolated myself from people.
Right.
And so then on April, so at that time, what else was happening was I could barely like use my fingers. Like my joints were really sore. I could barely like even button a shirt.
Yeah, your muscles were weak.
My muscles were weak, stiff. Couldn't really put my pants on. And then I started getting these red nodules all over my fingers, and the slightest hit of it would be excruciating pain. So that was another thing that was a problem. So it just took me longer to get ready, and it just was getting worse and worse and worse. And then the other thing that took the cake was I started having these like shivers. I was always either really hot, but then I would just go into cold, and I'm just like shivering and can't stop uncontrollably. And this would happen at night. This would happen at night when it was time to go to sleep or getting close, because the shift that I was working at the jail was 4 to 12. So I was getting off late, and by the time I got off, I was really tired. I was emotionally drained by dealing with this individual, and I would go home and just collapse, you know, and then I would go into this convulsion. It was like a convulsion, more than shivers, it was like a convulsion.
I couldn't explain that to anyone. I'm so glad that you can relate, because they were like, but it's not cold. I'm like, but I can't explain it.
Right. So then you would, you know, cover yourself and get hot, and then you get too hot.
Right.
And it was just a constant
back and forth.
So then I started telling my mom about it, because I wanted to get the HIV test first, because I didn't know whether it was that. I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And I'm thinking all these thoughts, like, how am I going to tell somebody that I caught something like this that's like shutting my body down, you know? So that's stressing me out even more.
That was a relief when I got the result. I was like, thank you, God.
Yeah. So whatever else it is, I can deal with it, you know? So then I was telling my mom about the convulsions that I was having at night, and she got concerned. She said, well, why don't you come over my house? And she even got to the point where she was bringing me food at my job, because she noticed I wasn't eating. She knew I was losing weight, and I just would look at the food. I just had no appetite for it. I just didn't eat. And so I stayed at her house one night, and she witnessed the convulsions, and she said, you need to go to your doctor the next day. So the next day, I think it was April 28th, I went to my doctor, and he's my family doctor. I've been going to him all of my life. And he immediately saw me, and he was like, we need to admit you. You know, whatever's going on, you know, I can't do it right here in this office. You need to go. And I went to Sinai, because that's where I was born. I'm just the West Side, you know, that's just
West Side certified.
So I went to Sinai, and that's where his office is located. And he told me to go to the emergency room and go through that process. Well, being in the emergency room, I was really cold. You know, it's just a sterile kind of environment. They were trying to find veins to hook, you know, to get me to the IV, because I was dehydrated. So
that's always a process.
That's a process. And then I was already just physically in pain, because even when you're exhausted, your threshold for pain is really low. You know. So it was hard for them to find a vein to even, and I have veins, like I'm a veiny person, but
never me.
Yeah, when I was going through that, you could barely get a vein.
Wow.
So that was like an excruciating process. Finally made it through that. I stayed in the hospital for a week. In that week, I was just bedbound. I had a bunch of infectious disease doctors and interns coming and poking and prodding at me that entire week. Even after I told them that my results were negative, they insisted to do other testing, because of course you see a black young female come in emaciated, you know, that's the first thing you think is that, oh, she has some type of infectious disease. So for pretty much the whole week, they were in and out asking me questions about my sex partners and telling me to call my sex partners and ask them, you know.
Wow.
So that was somewhat humiliating, because I did call a couple of people. I called the guy that I was with at that time, and he was like, look, I'm in the military. We get tested all the time. You're fine. You know, he said, that's just their process. Just go through it, and, you know, you'll be fine. Wow. And he was right, you know. It was
but in the process while you're going through it, you're not thinking oh, I'm fine. I'm thinking, what is going on?
Right.
So I can only imagine how scary that was for you for an entire week of going through that. So while you're going through all those tests, because I'm quite sure they did every test possible, because I remember them poking and prodding when I was going through, and I think they ran every test humanly possible to figure out what was going on with me when they draw that blood. What was some of the tests that they told you about, or did they even tell you any of the tests? They just ran the test.
They just ran the test. My doctor, because his office was at the hospital, he was consulting with the doctors that were working with me.
Okay.
So they pretty much were telling him everything.
Got you.
At night, I would go through the convulsions, and even with the convulsions, I would sweat profusely to the point that I'm drenched. My gown was drenched, and I was too weak to even change my gown, where the nurses were just coming in and changing my gowns at night. I just had no energy, and I think being in that hospital bed like that didn't make it any better. Right. So the insurance company says, send her home. If she don't have a diagnosis and y'all don't know what's going on with her, send her home. Because you're just basically giving her Tylenols. I think at that time they were just giving me Tylenol for the pain.
Tylenol?
Or, whatever, They were just giving me Tylenols, and...
Man, that pain level is like 1,000.
I know.
Tylenol,
I don't know if it was 800 milligrams. I don't know what. Motrins, I don't know. But they were just giving me pills and changing my gown at night, and that was it. So they felt like,
wow.
I needed to go home and consult with my primary care doctor, which is what I did initially. He sent me to the emergency room.
Right. That's where we started.
Right. So, not sure what test they ran, but after I got out, I took a week off of work. I was off that whole week that I was in the hospital, and I took an additional week off to get myself together. Because when I got out, that's when I realized how much smaller I had gotten. So when I got out the hospital, that's when I was 95 pounds. Appetite started picking up a little bit better, and I think it's because I was away from the work environment, but then I was still in another negative environment that was telling me that I may have some type of life-threatening disease, HIV or AIDS. So they ran an additional AIDS test it's more intense than just a regular blood test. It's like some type of test to see if it's not formed completely yet, but it's like on its way. I don't know, but that was negative too. So
they were doing a lot.
They was doing a lot. It was like they were banking on that.
Right.
So once I got out a week after that, I was driving down York Road, and I got a call from my doctor, and he said, I think I may know what it is. So I said, well, let me pull over because this doesn't sound, good. So that's when he said, I think it might be lupus. And at that time, I didn't really know what lupus was. Nobody in my family has it. So I'm thinking it's like some type of life-threatening disease, lupus.
Right.
It doesn't sound
we don't know what it is, so like...
Right. So I'm like, freaking out, asking him all these questions. He said, well, I want you to make an appointment with with this rheumatologist who's also at Sinai. And this guy's like renowned in the community, I guess. So I couldn't get an appointment with him until August.
And what month was this?
This was May.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, so I'm like freaking out. I'm going online to see what lupus is.
Oh, you did a Google search?
Yeah.
Or did we have Google back then?
2008, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just check. Yeah, because I can't remember, my bad. No, because I did the same thing. Mine was over 4th of July weekend that they told me. That's the last thing you want to tell me, you have a long weekend.
Right.
I Googled everything. I was like, oh my God, what if I have AIDS? Oh my God. I didn't know what it was, so I kept like looking up, and what one thing led to another, and then one thing led to another, so not knowing, but at least you had one thing to rule out. You know was it HIV,
right.
You know what HIV AIDS,
right.
But I ain't know nothing, so I was just in panic.
So was I. Couldn't wait until I got to the appointment in August. So when I went into the doctor's office, I always travel with a bottle of water. So I go into his office and I sit down, and he's asking me about this bottle of water, and I'm like, what does the bottle of water have to do with anything?
Water, like,
yeah, like
I keep mine with me everywhere I go. Like, what?
But to him, it meant something. So he says, "Do you always carry a bottle of water?" I say, "Yeah." And then he asked some other questions about dryness. Are my eyes dry? Is my throat dry? And I do notice that my voice is a little raspy at times. And it wasn't always that way.
Right.
So, so he said, well, so he writes down and he's writing, and I actually brought the sheet with me.
Yes, y'all. She got the actual notes.
The diagnosis.
I was like, yeah, she got the real.
Yes.
She got facts and receipts.
Yes. So he's writing down the stuff and he's writing my history. And just so you know, I did have to go through another autoimmune disease. Back in 2003, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is a combination of hyper and hypothyroidism. They wanted to do the surgery. They gave me options of whether I wanted to take the medicine or do the surgery to remove the thyroid, and then I would have to be on hormones for the rest of my life. And at that time, I think I was 21 years old, and that just wasn't an option for me. So I had the radioactive iodine done, and then I just took the medicine, and she weaned me off of it, and that has not been a problem since.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, so he's writing down my history. He basically diagnosed me with Sjogren's syndrome.
Yeah, good old Sjogren's. I got that too.
Right, which is the dry mouth, dry eyes. I had the positive ANA. I had low white count, anemia, the spots on my fingers, erythema, something like that. So he's writing down all of these things. And then he had some type of scale where it was 4 components. And he told me that I met 3 of the 4. You have to have all 4 to be diagnosed with lupus. So he said, you meet 3 of the 4. And of course, the positive ANA is one of them.
I'm about to say that ANA is like always a red flag. When they say ANA, you're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And the erythema, I'm like, isn't that part of lupus?
Right.
So I'm just like, wait, that's in the word. SLE. That's crazy.
So I have these 3 components, but this was back in 2008 before the Affordable Care Act. So at that time, he was considerate enough to say, well, I'm not going to diagnose you with lupus because I don't want you're so young, and I don't want you to have a problem getting insurance. Because at that time, insurance companies could discriminate against you based on what type of sicknesses and illnesses or predisposed illnesses that you had. So that's why I said I almost got diagnosed. But there's another component to that. When people were saying, well, what were you in the hospital for? What happened to you? And I would say, I have lupus. That didn't settle well for me. That didn't settle well for me to say I have lupus. Like, I didn't want to own it. Yeah. Call it denial, call it whatever, but I said, nah.
It ain't mine. I was diagnosed with, but I don't own that. It ain't mine.
So something would not let me own that for some reason. And I'm kind of like a metaphysical type of person. So like you say, you're into holistic healing and things of that sort. And because I knew what caused the stress, because I knew that I felt my nerves moving around this man in a way that I never experienced in my life, I knew that was the root of the disease. Like that brought it. It may have been laying dormant. Right. But that brought it.
That was the trigger.
That was the trigger. And I think, to all of us out there, we need to look back at what was going on in our lives during the time that we were diagnosed.
Right.
Because it could be a bad relationship. It could be a toxic work environment. It could just be a toxic friend that may still be around us.
And every time you get a flare up, watch what's going on that's causing that flare.
So it took me almost a year after my hospital stay to feel 100%. Wow. Like it was a slow healing process for me. And in that process, and then in 2011, I started having flare-ups again. And that's because I was in a very toxic relationship, very deep, dark, toxic relationship. And my mother was like, what's going on? And that made me look at the relationship and say, you got to get out of this. I started having flare-ups again in 2013, another toxic relationship. So, like you said, paying attention to what's going on at that time. I just want to urge everybody to do that, even to look back, even if you are and you've been diagnosed with lupus and you've had kidney transplants and it's gotten to the point that it's just like really bad and it's just there to stay. still you can prevent flare-ups by just being cognizant of who you're around, what you're, doing. Are you stretching yourself too much? Whatever it is,
it's a process. So it's mind, body, and your spirit. So you got to watch all those things. Like, what are you feeding your body? What are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding your spirit? And I can tell when something is off in one of those areas. So if I'm not eating right, if I'm not sleeping right, if the people around me are listen.
That's the biggest factor.
Listen.
To me, that's the biggest factor.
Ma'am.
These workplaces,
ma'am.
These relationships, and these are outside sources, that don't have anything to do with, it's what we allow.
Exactly. And sometimes, as painful as it is, you have to cut ties with certain things and certain people. It's not that you don't want to do certain things or be around certain people, but for your health.
Right.
And I'm so glad that you brought that book. I've been hearing so much about that book, and she recently passed away.
Did she?
Yeah, she passed away like a week ago, and I read it online. I cried like I knew the lady. Like, we're talking about Louise Hay.
Heal Your Body.
And I've been hearing so much about that book, and my mom bought me a calendar, and each day of the year in 2016 had an affirmation or a quote. So I really look forward each day to like peeling it back and just having a new affirmation for that day. So when I heard that, when I read online on Facebook that she passed, I cried like I knew the lady.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to get into her book. So tell us how that book has helped you in your healing, because I know you're not on any medicine for any of the autoimmune diseases that they diagnose you with, and you were able to, like we talk about the mind and the body and your spirit, you're able, and that's why I said everything is different for everybody. You were able to heal yourself in a different kind of way. So how has that been for you?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been holding strong because I still use it to this day. 2008 was almost 10 years ago. So this book by Louise Hay is called Heal Your Body, and I can't even remember how it was brought to my attention, but it's here now. And it has all of the sicknesses that we may experience. It could go from gout. It could go from nearsightedness. It could go. I know it's some kiddies having a good old time. And so I looked up what was the meaning for, and it basically, it gives you the disease, it gives you the mindset that was behind the disease, and it gives you a positive affirmation for you to speak into your life against that. So with lupus, it's a giving up. And at that time, when I was working where I was working, I was so angry at myself for leaving a job that was cushy for me, to go to this nightmare place, and I just felt like giving up. I just felt like life was coming to an end. What have I done? I was kicking myself in the butt. I just was so angry with myself. And it says, better to die than stand up for oneself. Anger and punishment. So these are the mindsets that's behind lupus, is giving up. Better to die than to stand up for oneself. Anger and punishment. And I was so angry with myself at that time. And I don't know if I was punishing myself by not eating. I don't know. And then that brought on the whole just decline.
It's a steady decline, because once you're not eating, you're not feeding your body. Your mind is already deteriorating from you beating yourself up. So it's just a natural progression. Wow.
And then so the positive affirmation behind that, and this can go for someone who is, I don't want to say suffering from, but who has lupus and is going through it right now. You can still say these things to yourself, and miraculous things can happen.
It doesn't matter what level you are right now. I mean, because we've all been in that sunken place at one point or another. But I mean, from where I was, liver failure, a mass on my right lung, stage 3 kidney disease, and could barely walk. And I basically gave up, so I could see why that. I was like, okay, so when am I going to die? Because this is just too much.
Yeah.
I could see why, that can be giving up, but it took a lot to get up.
Right.
So what's the positive affirmation that goes with that? Because somebody right now needs to hear that.
So the positive affirmation is, I speak up for myself freely and easily. I claim my own power. I love and approve of myself. I am free and I am safe. And I just focused on that. I focused on that affirmation, and I focused on making those things a reality.
Wow.
Whatever the doctor prescribed, he prescribed Saligen, which was to increase, I guess, the saliva.
Yeah, I was just telling you that I'm on that, and it makes me literally drool. I have hot flashes, and I sweat like crazy, and my doctor wants me to take it 4 times a day, and I only take it 1 because I figure if I'm going to do all that, I'd rather do it at night at home.
Yeah. So I never took that. I just said I'll just keep drinking my water. My eyes are still dry. My throat is still dry, but I just try to stay away from medicines as much as possible. I know when I had my thyroidism, they were trying to put me on steroids, and I refused that as well. And
you ain't missing enough. I did steroids for 13 months.
Yeah, they were saying I was going to gain all of this weight.
Yeah, I did.
So I just was like, no, I'm not
40
going to do
pounds.
that.
I just finally lost it 2 years later.
You're looking good.
Thank you. You ain't missing nothing.
So I mean, doctors will put this stuff in front of you, and you have to make a choice whether it's for you or not.
Yeah, you gotta be your own advocate.
Yeah. So that's a part of standing up for ourselves, right?
I finally figured that out last summer because my doctor was like, "Well, you have a lot of inflammation in your blood." When my blood work came back in summer 2016, and we're gonna put you back on steroids. I was like, the devil is a lie. I'm not getting back on that thing. Like I literally was flipping out in his office, and
he's like, okay.
He was like, okay. I was like, no, I'm not getting back because I remember how angry I was on that. I wasn't pleasant to be around, and
which
I'm
probably
normally
increased your lupus.
I wasn't pleasant to be around. I ate every damn thing. Excuse me. I ate everything that was around. And I gained so much weight, and the more weight I gained, the worse the pain in my knees got.
Oh,
so how is that benefiting me?
Right.
So I was like, the steroids might take away the pain, but everything else that it comes with, and then all the hot and cold flashes at night and the shivers, that got 10 times worse. I was like, no. I flipped out. I was like, no, I don't want that. I'm not taking it. He was like, okay.
Yeah, because they'll put it in front of you because, I mean, we have to keep in mind these doctors are paid to push these, medicines.
Yeah.
So, and then he said take calcium and vitamin D.
Yeah.
To prevent osteoporosis because the lupus can.
It does affect your bones.
Yeah. Take a beating on your bones and your joints and everything. So that's something that I probably should take.
That I do take. I do take fish oil, and that actually has helped with my skin and fish oil and vitamin D. I especially take vitamin D because I can't be out in the sun. That sun is like it pierces through my skin, like to my bones.
It was like I was a vampire. I could not go out in the sun. If I did, I had to wear a hat, like a heavy hat. I also had spots on my chest. Like after I got out the hospital, I had like these circular light spots all over my chest plate, and I didn't know what that was about. So I felt, and it does take a beating on your self-esteem, because you don't look the same, you don't feel the same, and it's tough. And I don't want anybody to think, oh, she don't have lupus, but I went through all of the symptoms, that
and we all go through different stages too.
Yeah.
So everybody's stages don't look the same.
Right. So I'm just blessed that the doctor, wasn't led by the insurance companies and all that type of stuff, and he, made a choice that he would probably have made for his daughter.
Right. He trusted your judgment, which is not very common in today's society because my kidney doctor trusted me. His first approach was, we're going to put you on chemo to slow the progression down of the kidney disease. And I was like, pause, time out. Wait. All right, I'm already bald. At the time, my hair was cut real close. It was bald. I was like, I ain't going to lose no hair because I'm good. But I've seen what people who are on chemo go through. Can you give me a minute? Let me figure out how to fix this. And I actually consulted with one of my cousins. We call her the bush doctor. And you know, she was like, get milk thistle, get dandelion. No, the real dandelion greens. That thing tastes terrible. Oh my God, I ate it. It's so bitter. But I was getting all these stuff that she was telling me about, and I was blending it, I was drinking it, I was eating it, and it was cleansing my liver, it was cleansing my organs, and before I knew it, the mass was gone off my lung.
Wow.
My so-called liver failure that was taking place, my liver was fine.
Wow.
Until this day, my liver is still fine. My lungs are fine, my liver's fine, stage 3 kidney disease, but it's being reversed.
Right.
So where my creatinine level was 2.0, it's now 1.6.
It can be reversed.
So I'm like, all right, so I'm reversing. I'm ready to go back to 1.0. That's normal. I'm like, hey, I'm
keep doing what you're doing.
So what we're saying to everybody is that it's possible, as we wrap up, it's possible for you to go from where you are now and manifest whatever destiny that you want. It's not going to be what the doctors are saying, because if you listen to what the doctors are saying, you probably be in the grave. She didn't go that route. She took matters into her own hands, and she researched, and she found something that was comfortable for her, and she worked with her doctors. Don't get me wrong, she did. She didn't go outside of everything. But what we're saying is, you got to fight for your own life. You got to stand up for yourself. You have a voice. Use the voice that God gave you. Stand up for you. Fight for you. Because if you don't fight for you, no one else is going to fight for you. And that's something that I've learned firsthand, and you've learned that. So in everything that you do, whether it's lupus or Sjogren's or any other autoimmune disease, yes, you're going to have to research some things, but make sure you're researching things that are going to benefit you. And if it doesn't benefit you, walk away from it. That's in life, period.
Workplaces, relationships,
everything.
Friendships.
If it's not going to benefit you, you got to find a way to walk away from it, because it's only going to make you ill. And sometimes those are the toughest decisions, but they will bring the greatest rewards.
It's life or death.
Say it again.
It's life or death.
Ain't nobody got time to be dying, honey. We got things to do.
Yes, we're here for a reason.
We got things to do and people to save. And once again, we call this series It Takes a Village, because we want you to know that you are not alone. You're not in this by yourself. And whatever you're going through, be encouraged. Once again, can you tell the name of that book so that they can go out and get it, and you know that they can be blessed by it? Because I've heard so many things about it, but I've never actually gotten it. So now it's time. That part is powerful.
It's called Heal Your Body by Louise Hay.
And with that, we're signing off. Thank you for joining us, and make sure you share this video. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. I see that y'all watching, but y'all not subscribing. Subscribe. Until next time, be blessed. Love on yourself.